Judge, what makes this Project 65 group so scary for so many lawyers to the point where they would stay away from defending the former president?
What makes it scary is that someone who's not involved in the case, you're a lawyer, you have a client, you have an adversary, suddenly some entity from out of nowhere comes in and says, for the following reason, you can't represent the client. So let's lay this out. First, the laws are different in every state. For example, in some states, when there's an ethics complaint filed against a lawyer, it's done in secret, so that if it doesn't succeed, there's no tarnishing of the lawyer's reputation. So the mere filing of the complaint alone is not going to prevent the lawyer from doing the lawyer's work. In other states, when these complaints are filed, the law requires that the complainant have an interest in the outcome. So in other words, a third party who's not involved with the lawyer and who's not the client has no standing to file the complaint because they have no interest in the outcome. They were not harmed by what the lawyer allegedly did. But in some states, anybody can file an ethics complaint against a lawyer and state a case against them. Like, I have reason to believe that this lawyer is also a witness in the case, because there's a basic principle of law which says you can't be a witness and a lawyer in the same case. So the hook on which this 65 group is hanging their hats, Bob, is these lawyers did something in the past with Trump so that they might be called as witnesses, and therefore they can't be lawyers in the case.
Wow. Let me ask you a completely different question. There are people out there floating the idea, including some legal experts, who say that Donald Trump can't be on the ballot. Or there's an option that he not be put on the ballot based on the 14th Amendment, which essentially wants to keep anyone that committed insurrection against the U.S. government during the Civil War, that they can't be part of it. I wanted to get your take on that.
Well, I profoundly disagree with those who say that Donald Trump can be kept off the ballot because of a decision by a bureaucrat based upon what the bureaucrat has perceived from the media. If Donald Trump were convicted by a jury of having participated in an insurrection, and he hasn't even been charged with that, the January 6th case against him is not accusing him of being an insurrectionist, but only then could he be kept off a ballot. I'm disappointed at a lot of my colleagues, foremost among whom is Judge Michael Luttig, a Reagan appointee and a hero to the conservatives and the legal movement in the country, now retired from the federal bench, who are arguing in favor of this. They point to state secretaries of state who kept off the ballot former Confederate soldiers. Well, if you were a Confederate soldier, if you wore the uniform, if you fought for the Confederacy, everybody knew that you did that, and that's why the amendment was written, because they didn't want you back in the government that you fought a war against. But if it's something short of that, surely there has to be more than just allegations in the public. There would have to be a conviction before you could be kept off the ballot.
Couldn't agree more, because you're the judge, and you know. But let me ask you, what, and I know nothing, but what if there's a Secretary of State somewhere in Maine, in Georgia, I'm just picking those states, it could be Wisconsin, where they say, yeah, we're not going to let him on the ballot. What's the route to challenge that, and when would that take place?
We don't have to make that up, Bob. The Secretary of State of New Hampshire, which last time around was a battleground state, and only has 5 electoral votes, but it's a battleground state, has said that he has second thoughts about whether or not Donald Trump can appear on the ballot. Now, the governor disagrees with him, but the decision will be the Secretary of State's. If Donald Trump is the Republican nominee, and if his people succeed in going through whatever laws New Hampshire has to get his name on the ballot, and the Secretary of State strikes it, then Trump personally would have to sue the Secretary of State in federal court in New Hampshire, and whichever way it goes, it'll go to the First Circuit in Boston, and whichever way it goes there, it'll go to where all these things end up, in the Supreme Court of the United States.
Because at that point, Trump would have standing.
Absolutely would have standing.